Today I have a lower body nerve floss to complement the nerve floss that I posted a couple weeks ago for the upper body. Everything that I said about the upper body in terms of when or why we would nerve floss still applies for lower body. It's just obviously we are going to be in a different position, but more or less upholding the same premise, which is unlike muscles, which stretch when we hold a certain position for a certain amount of time, nerves don't stretch the same way. They actually rather dislike being stretched. And instead, in order to get them to kind of calm down and feel better, we want to do sort of an oscillating type movement, which allows the nerve to be pulled from one end to the other, a bit like you're cleaning a pipe. And in the case of the lower body, often, much like with the upper body, when a nerve is cranky, essentially in the lower body, it's not something where more often than not, if the nerve is cranky, it's not the sole reason for that individual's pain. It's actually going to be something that is a contributing factor to the amount of pain that they feel, or sort of how irritable or how many repetitions it takes to do something before their pain level or discomfort level gets to a high enough point that they stop doing the activity, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's not always necessarily the cause of the pain, but it is heightening their discomfort. And so as such, when doing a nerve floss, it can definitely help decrease the person's pain or discomfort or sort of like overall feeling like they need to keep moving or something like that, their fidgetiness. But it should be an exercise, any nerve floss exercise is one that should be done in concert with any stretches or any strengthening exercises that are actually addressing the issue that is causing the nerve to be irritated in the first place. Often, let's say if we've got a knee issue or an ankle issue, the nerve can actually be a large reason why we still feel pain around the knee or still feel pain around the ankle, even if it doesn't feel like a typical nerve pain, like a burning or tingles or something like that. Often just having like extra sensitivity around the knee or the ankle can be the nerve that's slightly cranky that's just perpetuating that pain after a while. But also obviously if we've got any kind of muscle imbalance or disc issue or muscle tension in the back or in the hips, that can also often cause the nerve to get a bit crankier and to give us various symptoms. So common nerve symptoms would be things like a line of pain going down the leg, or even just kind of like going from one single point to maybe like a little bit lower in the bum or whatever. Could be anything like tingles. It could be sort of an overall sensation of like the leg just feels heavy, or there's sort of like a constant pressure, or the feeling, if you were to describe how your quad feels, for example, that you'd say it's tight, but then if you actually go to press on it, it's actually not that tight at all. Like the muscles aren't that tight. That is often an indication that the nerve is giving the sensation that it's tight when it actually isn't, so that you'll roll it or you'll stretch it or you'll do various other things. Often a key indicator that it's a nerve that's more of the issue rather than a muscle, for example, giving the sensation of tension, would be if the pain starts to get worse the longer we hold static positions, like sitting for a while or standing for a while. Or if we find that the pain or discomfort, kind of like a fidgetiness, is actually worse at night, or if there's a constant pain regardless of how you move, then like constant pain can indicate inflammation or nerve irritation. But if you find that the discomfort or the pain or whatever symptom you're experiencing is worse when you're at night, when you're lying perfectly still, and then it's hard to find a comfortable position, so you're tossing and turning, that in my mind is the nerve's way of essentially getting you to move, because the more we move, the more that nerve kind of slides and glides in the tissues, and or the more we move, the more blood's being pushed through the muscles and towards the nerve, and so then it kind of calms down a little bit. So in all of these scenarios, these are things that would indicate maybe trying a nerve floss would be helpful. And there are various forms of a lower body nerve floss, just like there are various forms for an upper body nerve floss, but probably the one that I give the most often is called the Slump. And the reason I give the slump is, or like the context in which I would give the slump as an exercise, would be for someone who feels an increase in their discomfort when they're sitting. So like sitting in the car is a very, very common one. Sitting at the desk or sitting on the couch, any of those sustained sitting positions where, let's say they've got a bit of pain in their lower back, and the longer they sit, the more it starts to creep down the back of their leg. That's probably the most common scenario that I give this exercise for. And so in order to get the nerve to essentially be more comfortable in this sitting position, we want to floss it in a sitting position. So we want to sit in a chair where it's high enough that our feet are kind of dangling off the floor. And there are various forms even of the slump that you can do, but the one that, like, and I'll show a few different versions, and you want to pick the one that initially sort of pulls the most through the pain point. So if it's your lower back or your leg or wherever, you want to pick the one that pulls the most at first, and then we're going to floss through that. So the start position is sitting in a chair, feet dangling, and then we want to go into a slump. We want to slump through the upper back. We want to go full golem. If we can, we almost want to like roll through the tailbone as well and try and get the tailbone to round under, and then we kind of lean forward this way, and we get that much more of a round curve through the upper back. From here, even in this position, there are a couple of different options. So from this position, I can test out whether moving my head up and down makes a difference to the sensation through my lower back and leg. And if it does, then you can start just with this as a nerve floss, where you sit here, and I'm going to keep the same position through my back, but I'm going to lift up, and I'm going to look down, I'm going to look up, I'm going to look down. And as that gets easier, as I do more reps, and it pulls a little bit less through the leg or whatever, I can try to round even more through that position to lift my head up and down to try and really, really kind of floss through that painful area. If you find that once you're in this position, moving your head doesn't really make much of a difference, but lifting your leg does, then you can just do your leg. And the idea would be to lift your leg as well as try to pull your toes towards you as high as you can, where you stop when you start to feel a bit of a pull through the back, the leg, wherever, and you go back and forth this way, okay? And if that doesn't really help, or if you actually find that that pulls too much, that you can't even really, like, it hurts too much, then you can do a bit of like a head and foot combination where you do nose and toes to the floor, nose and toes up. But notice that when I lift my head, I keep my back in that rounded position, okay? So you only lift as far as you can with the leg, where you can keep your lower back rounded. If you start to lift, but you start to do this because it pulls too much in your back, then you've lifted your leg too much. So head down, toes down, nose and toes down, nose and toes up, nose and toes down, nose and toes up. And there really isn't any like wrong combination of this. It's really a person by person situation, and it could even for that single person vary from day to day, depending on whether like they've done a workout with a whole bunch of quad work or a whole bunch of hamstring work, and these muscles are a little bit tighter. They might find that the leg version is more, it pulls a little bit more, it's a bit more effective than just moving their head. But then other days, if they're sitting in the car for a long time and then moving their head actually pulls more than the leg, they can do that too. So really, the idea is to find whatever variation of that works for you on that given day, and you can play around with it and do a few reps of each to see where you feel the most amount of pull, without it being a really, really sharp, unbearable pull where you're kind of straightening up through the back. So you want to ride that line a little bit. Whichever variation you do, the goal would be to do a set of 20, and you only do one leg at a time. If you find that the other leg actually doesn't pull through the back at all, then you don't need to do this leg at all. Unlike stretches and strengthening exercises where it's a good idea to do it on both sides, nerve flosses you can really focus on just doing it on the side that has pain or symptoms or discomfort. So with the painful side, Your goal is to get to 20 with whichever variation you're going to use in that set. And if, as you go through the set, you feel like you can either get your leg higher or you can round your back a little bit more to get the same sensation of pull or same level of pull, that's what you're looking for. Or even if you've completely reached your max curvature through your back and you're lifting up all the way, you'll find that the overall sensation of pulling will go down as you do the set. These are all things that you're looking for. But if you find that as you go through the set, let's say after the sixth or seventh repetition, the sensation you're feeling is getting a lot worse, or if you find after a set of 20 that like things just kind of feel irritated and a little burny or annoying or whatever for like more than 40 minutes after you do a set, then that if you feel it getting worse during the set, you want to stop. If you feel that it's worse or a bit irritable for 20 plus or 40 plus minutes after doing the set, then you want to do fewer reps. Either way, if the symptoms are kind of worse, you want to stop / do fewer reps in future sets, but you still want to try and do those sets later in the day. So ultimately, the goal would be to do a set of 20, 3 times a day, spaced out. So like morning, noon, and night. If you find as you do those sets of 20 throughout the day that it actually really overall helps the situation throughout the day, then you can add other sets. You can do up to 5, you can do every 3 hours, whichever works for you. If you find that your discomfort is worst at night, then I would definitely make sure that you do a set before you go to sleep, just to kind of put all the eggs in one basket. If you find that in the mornings it's really stiff and cranky and it takes a few minutes to warm up, then just as you're sitting at the edge of your bed, that's when I would do another set just to kind of get you going a little bit. So, recap. Find the variation that fits for you in that set, do a few reps of each variation, and then your goal is to do a set of 20 in that set if you can. And if things start to feel better, or if you can go through more range, or if the pain just completely dissipates by the end of the set of 20, that's what you're looking for. If it gets worse, you stop as it's getting worse, but you still try and do later sets throughout the day, and the goal is to do 3 sets throughout the day in total. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below, or you can send me a DM. Thanks.